Hi, and welcome to Connected Conversations, a place where creatives like you can learn, grow, and connect. I'm your host, Jennifer Carr. And whether you write music, pen stories, host a podcast, paint canvases, perform on a stage or a screen, if you produce any form of art, your work holds importance. But equally significant is you, the mastermind behind the creation. As a creative, however, there are some major issues that can arise in the arenas of visual and performing arts that can make massive waves for the creators as well as their work. And those things can come with some legal ramifications. So I'm so excited that joining me today is Elissa Hecker, an attorney who stands as a pillar of support for creatives, small businesses, and entrepreneurs. She's here to talk about some of the legal intricacies that can have a huge impact on your creative journey and career. We'll discuss some vital issues that lie at the intersection of law and imagination, subjects like rights, contracts, licensing issues, copyright, collaborations, and some hot topic issues rising up in different creative fields. So, welcome, Elissa, to the Connected Conversations for Creatives podcast. I am so glad that you are here today.
Thank you so much. That was a beautiful introduction and so many great keywords that I want to take and use in the future. I love it.
I will send it your way and you can have it. So until recently, I was blissfully ignorant of the need for an attorney that specializes in legal issues for creatives. I knew there were legality things that surround my work, but they kind of seemed like really small potatoes that I never really looked into beyond a quick Google search. Sorry, like I know it's up there with doctors and WebMD probably, but with experience comes wisdom, and I realized that Google can really only take you so far. So when I saw your name pop up on my screen and in my inbox, it was like perfect timing because I know that I'm not the only creator out there who is unenlightened. So before we jump into the enlightenment part, tell us about you and how you found yourself in entertainment law.
Well, thank you. And you are not by far the only one who has ever said that or done that. Many people come my way after they've already done the first round and realized how much more they could have gotten, or at least the questions they could ask or what they didn't want. I was a copyright nerd from very early on. My dad was one of the original members of the copyright board, and copyright bar. And I grew up surrounded by creatives. Most of us in the copyright bar are closet musicians, writers, whatever. I was a dancer and a choreographer my whole life. I used to put C and circle in all of my kindergarten work. I mean, it was really from the very early on. I knew my profession wasn't going to be as a dancer because I wasn't good enough. It's a very difficult life, but I knew I wanted to be involved in the creative field. I was in the music business for about 10 years, right? During and out of law school. I worked for the Authors Guild for a little bit, represented some museums through law school. And then it was just a natural progression when I hung up my own shingle almost 20 years ago that I wanted to continue working with the creatives, because my goal is to protect you, know what you want, have you set up so that you can go and do what you do best, which is not the back office legal and business affairs. You need to have that protection so you have the freedom to create. So that's pretty much it. And I still feel like that 12-year-old outside the stage door with the program in my hand every time I work with a creative client. So it's fun and exciting.
That's fascinating. Like that's really cool because I mean, like even struggling through like legalzoom.com, like those are not easy places. Like there's still jargon that is like, oh my gosh. So I would rather have somebody sit down with me and be like, this is what you need to know.
Well, I'm so happy you said that, because cutting and pasting from the internet or using something like LegalZoom will not give you what you need. It'll give you an idea, but you don't know about jurisdictions. You don't know what's allowed. It doesn't really delineate between federal and state and different things like that. So very often it's important to invest in the beginning and save a boatload at the end. I always say I help my clients make money and keep relationships and form relationships so that you just have that infrastructure built in. And you also know the more you do it, the more you know how to issue spot. And the less you actually need an attorney, because practice makes perfect.
This is true. but and that's why that we all have our specializations, right? That's why I can go sit down and have a marriage and family counseling session with somebody, and you can sit down and have a legal conversation with somebody, because we all have our specialties. So we should probably go to the people. It's like there's those the Holiday Inn Express commercials where it's like, well, I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express. That's not good enough. You need somebody who actually knows what they're doing, and to get the very best, because your work matters. You matter, and there are a lot of people out there who would love to take your work and you for granted.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your favorite area of entertainment to work in?
A loaded question. I'd say I prefer the interesting clients rather than the work, because very often what you're creating, it puts something out there, and it makes the world a more interesting, better, more fun place. So there isn't one particular, obviously my history is dance, so I love working in the dance world, but it's all transferable across all of the creative industries. My favorite thing is watching a client really succeed and do really well and understand, like, that to me is like, yeah, or they come back and say, I was going to do this, but I had you in my ear, so I did that instead, and now I'm calling you. I'm like, that's what is the best. And then, also just being part of it, because when my clients do create things, whether or not I've worked on something with them, I get to see or watch or read or be part of it. And that's the coolest thing, because I am a performing artist. I am not a visual artist. I'm a great editor, but I'm not a great writer. So when I can see what they create or watch or things like that, that to me is the best part. Not any particular area of entertainment or arts, but actually to be able to see and take it all in. I don't know if that answered your question, but
no, it did. No, because you have to be able to appreciate art, I would think, in order to be a lawyer that works with all the artists. I can't imagine not really caring about the art and then trying to help the artist out and really understand where they're coming from and where they're trying to go.
Yeah, and I had 2 clients who recently sent me information that they just were nominated for Emmys, so that was so exciting to see, the success rate from starting very beginning, and to see them be able to go up and be built into these really powerhouse business people as well as artists, which is sometimes not the case. Very often you don't think as a creative in a business sense, but the more successful you are, the more you need to.
Oh, definitely. That is something that I've always been a very creative brain, but I do not have the business brain. But thankfully, I married a man who does, and so we make a very good
You need
team.
your team of advisors.
That's right.
People who you can trust.
Exactly. And I think that a lot of times creatives get so clingy with our work that we're scared to let other people join us on the journey. And so we need people in our court, but it's also kind of hard to find the people we can trust. And so I love that you are part of that network for artists out there and are available to help them like succeed and be the best that they can be.
Yeah. I feel like we're in a commercial. Yes.
This is a commercial for you, and it really is. Like, I want people to understand that I don't ask people to join me here just because we're going to have a conversation's great, but like, you need people in your court, and so I'm providing those networks and those connections.
Yeah, no, and it's also important to understand the business and to understand the industries and the ins and outs of the intricacies, and the personalities. So for sure.
Oh yeah. And like, I named a few, like a very short list of issues that creatives can face, but what are like maybe the top 2 or 3 that creatives face?
Well, right now the hot button topic is AI, which is what's happening. And there's some lawsuits going on. There are strikes going on. It runs the gamut of the creative industries. So that's something that's being a big topic of conversation right now. The Copyright Office came out with a decision that said, well, not a decision, a comment that said, you cannot register for copyright something that's created merely by prompts for AI, but you really have to have human touch into it and creation with it, which is helpful. And then we'll see what happens with the lawsuits and obviously with the strikes and negotiations about what's going to happen with name, image, and likeness, with writing, with pretty much everything. It's kind of up for grabs right now. It's an interesting area. Yeah,
it is. Just in the last week, I think I saw two pretty big name authors, and they were two totally different issues, but they both stemmed from AI. One was a book cover that had basically been lifted from AI and then just simply recolored. And then another was an author who their name had been used on AI generated books without her consent. And I thought, well, that is a huge line that I had never even,
that's a problem.
it's
That's false
scary.
advertising. Yeah,
Right.
that's among other copyright issues. And one of the biggest issues for visual creators is that they're claiming that the AI systems took all of their works, and that's a copyright infringement to create something new and in the style of or things like that. It's very interesting. It's scary,
Yeah.
interesting, fascinating. It can also be super helpful. Like as a
Sure.
writer, if you want to sit down and you want to write a script or a screenplay and you want to just throw out ideas, it's a great tool for that, as long as it doesn't write it for you. One thing I'm putting in contracts now, for example, when people are doing commissioning agreements, we are saying this has to be original. This can't be defamatory. It can't be created by AI, things like that. We're now adding that part into the contract so that they know what they're getting is actually written by a human.
That is wild. And I think one of the also more recent ones was audiobook narrators, like their voices are being lifted.
Yep.
Even some actors, I think, are being
Yep.
lifted, their voices. And I'm thinking, how terrifying. So how do we protect our work? How do we protect ourselves? Like, I don't, that's,
These are, I mean, it's a good question.
yeah.
I'll answer like a lawyer. It
Yeah.
depends. What do you want to protect? That's one of the things that's going on in the SAG negotiation, for example, is that, I'm say, even if I'm not a major star, because the major stars do have negotiating power. But if I'm a background actor and you're just using me to fill in spots, but I used to get paid $150 a day to do it, and I no longer will. What kind of recourse do I have? If you're a writer, what's going in your contracts? If if you're a painter or a quilter and you like to, they use your stuff for the set, but people can pull things like that from the internet and not have you make it anymore. These are all various different things you can protect through copyright. Sometimes you could protect through trademark. You can protect through contract. Name, image, and likeness is the right of publicity or privacy, depending on in which state you are. Other times you may not have recourse, and that the courts haven't yet ruled on those things. So my advice is to protect as much as you can across the bat. And then, if you come up with something else later and you face it, that's a whole other thing. But it's just better to have everything taken care of to begin with.
And that's wild, because you think about, how many books have I written, and how many cover designs have I created, and there are just so many things that you have to go through and think about, what is mine, what have I done, and then you have to tag, oh my gosh. that seems exhausting. Probably why you need a lawyer to like help you do that stuff.
Well, also it's good when you're in the process of creating, when you're in the process of putting together your collaboration agreements, or if you've created something and it's now a published book cover, register it then. Take care of it then, rather than waiting to see if something happens. It is, for example, with the Copyright Office, if you're going to register something, it's like $35 to $55 to register something. It is super, and I can't believe for a government bureaucracy, it is super user friendly.
Yes.
And easy to do. And if you register, it's retroactive to the date of application. So that is like just an easy done. And you have your protection going forward. So instead of waiting until you have like 50 different covers, for example, do it each time. And then you have it in your portfolio and you have it, your protections.
Okay, so how would you find out? Like, if I had a cover design that I created, and then like, how would I find out if somebody had even used my work somewhere else? I mean, it would just be like a chance thing, or is there a way to like keep a tab on your stuff?
Sometimes you find out, I mean, obviously the more successful something is and the more money it makes, the more problems, or the more likely that you will see it. Word of mouth, somebody may tell you something. There are many different ways to find out. There is a statute of limitations, so it should be from when you found out or when you should have found out, a certain amount of time, so you have a little bit of leeway. And then to bring a copyright infringement lawsuit, you do have to have a copyright registration before you bring the infringement action. So that's important. And then if you have the registration, then if you win, you can get statutory damages. which could be like $150,000 instead of $10, and potentially legal fees covered. So it's a good thing to do.
So what I'm hearing is copyright, copyright, copyright.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you create something and it's in a fixed, tangible medium, it's original and something. So it can't be an idea, but it's something that's fixed and tangible and original to you. That is protected by copyright in the United States. But to register it gets you all those additional statutory provisions, which is the statutory rather than actual damages, because actual damages, like I said, could be $10. But if there's an infringement found, it could be $150,000 per infringement under the Constitution, and legal fees and things like that.
Right. Well, and that's good to know, because I am self-published. All of my stuff is self-published because I'm a control freak like that. I was
gonna say you like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I like the freedom and the control.
Yep.
But the current book that I'm working on, there are a ton of original song lyrics that are involved. And so I registered all of the song lyrics through the agency, because I was like, song lyrics are one of those things that I don't want somebody to be able to take it and use for themselves. I mean, not that they would, but just in case. But it never really occurred to me, because I always think, you always have the copyright page in the book, and I just assumed that covered, any kinds of legal situations that might arise. But I'm thinking, you're saying no, especially self-published authors, we don't really think in terms of we need to go register our books, but that's what I'm hearing, that I need to go okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Because usually if you sign with the publisher will take care of that, and then the rights revert back to you when the term is up. But you're publishing a book, you're acting as publisher. And then if you do have original lyrics in there that you then want to use as songs at another time, you may want to register them separately as lyrics. That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So, and see, that's one of those things that a lot of times we go into self-publishing because, one, querying agents and all that stuff is so exhausting, and just it's time consuming, and it's not consistent. And so we just decide to take control for ourselves. But there are so many nuances and caveats that we just kind of overlook, or we just don't know to look for. And that is one of them for me that I had no idea. So,
and you also brought up lyrics. If you want to use someone else's lyrics, very often, depending on how you use them, you need to get permission to do that. And often you have to put attribution in your book. So that's something important too.
Yes. And that is why I ended up writing my own, because it was
very smart.
I was just like because when you're talking like 14 different artists that you want to quote, because I mean, it was literally just going to be quotes. I thought, I'm not contacting 14 different artists reps to get permission to use lyrics when I am a writer and can write my own. Well, speaking of books and authors and that kind of thing, this is one I had emailed you about. It's like, hey, can we talk about this? This was one that it was kind of a shocking turn of events with book talk. It ran wild through the TikTok book community with a lot of different implications. Like, there was this author who wrote a spicy sports romance novel. And I thought at first it was a pretty genius marketing plan, because she approached the local sports team of the same variety that she had in her book. And she was like, hey, will you read these parts of my book while I take a video of you reading them? Don't read them out loud. Just, I want to see your reactions. And they, probably the spicy scenes or whatever. And women were going bonkers over it. And they were putting new faces on their fantasy book boyfriends, basically. And it was all like a mutual participation between the sports team and the social media platform. And it was kind of like, okay, they've got it going on. But after several weeks, one of the players and his wife spoke up.
It was like borderline harassment at some point. Yeah.
I was like, hey, this is getting out of hand. It needs to stop. But the author doubled down, backed her statements, and there was blowback. Both fans of the author and of the team, and the social media team pulled it all down. And the fans of the author kind of backed off. It was a heated pile of mess. It was, when all was said and done. So there was a lot of issues going on in that situation. What is your opinion? What's your perspective on that?
It's almost like a law school exam. There are so many different potential issues that come up. I was thinking about that as I was going through everything. And this is not even to talk about the plagiarism issues that happen on Book Talk and everything. But this kind of thing, and I don't know off the top of my head if, for example, she had releases from these players who were reading. And in which case, if she had releases, she really had the right to do whatever she wanted with it, because they would have said, you have the right to use my name, image, likeness in any way. I don't have the right to review it. I don't have the right to any more compensation. You could use it in any form or medium, never, existing now or invented in the future. She may or may not have had those. But the court of public opinion is also a real thing, and especially on social media. So should she have done this? I don't know. Was she the one who was doing all of the bad behavior? There was a lot of fan bad behavior. So there was a lot of the actions could reach out to the fans, because if she had a release, they didn't. Did she have a responsibility to call out to her fans to be like, whoa back, kind of thing? And also, I don't remember, again, if this was the individual team members, if the team signed off on this, if this was up to the individual athletes. How the athletes doing it would also affect their contracts, because there are morality clauses in the athletes' contracts. Do the athletes have sponsors or advertisers who sign them? And this could potentially impact their ability to make money through their sponsors if they're seen as to violate the terms of that. Like, there are so many different degrees that this can take.
Yeah, it was.
And I'm not quite sure who the responsible party is for any of it.
Right, because it was on the sports team, like their official TikTok channel. So, they were putting, and then they pulled.
So they were aware of that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like it was, somebody had to sign off on it, whether it was a contract or like a mutual grassroots kind of thing. I don't know, but it was that.
Well, the other thing is also, did the athletes potentially have a claim against the team or the management for misusing or certain times the athletes have to do what the team wants, and maybe they didn't want to, and now it turned to be kind of a threatening situation. So,
that is wild. Yeah, and I felt bad for the author on the one hand, because she went into it thinking, hey, this is a great idea to promote my book. It promotes the team, and she was already a fan of their team. And, so you think it looks like a good thing on the front end, but I think somebody probably dropped a ball somewhere and was like, it'll be fine. And it just got out of control. Like,
pardon the pun with dropping the ball, but yes.
Yeah, seriously. Or the puck in this case. But yeah, it was it was wild. I kept thinking, how many, because should the author,
it's like watching a train wreck. It's like
Yeah. And there were so many opinions from every direction. Like there were so many people who were like, oh, that's so disgusting. Like the wife is being such a prude, or, I'm going, I think it's something.
Yeah, but you also don't know who's standing outside the school when her husband's picking up his kid. Like it can be scary. There are some nut jobs on the internet, and it can be scary.
There are some nut jobs in book talk land on TikTok. Like it is. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, and like people are serious about, especially their boyfriends. Like they get crazy about this fake world, which that's a whole different ballgame. So thinking about the fact that all of this happened like on TikTok, and I'm sure that it happens across the social media, but with the rise of social media and online content creation, like there had to be a lot of changes in some of the legal actions and such that could be taken, because influencers and online creators, it's almost like a whole new ball game. But at the same time, I'm sure they face some of the similar things that have always existed. But do you see an uptick in like legal challenges with influencers and online creators?
Sometimes it's interesting, because originally Facebook and the original platforms said that when you posted, and Instagram and everything, when you posted original work, whether or not you were an influencer or you were just posting your backyard photos, that belonged to the service. And they had not belonged, but they had an unlimited license to use it for whatever they wanted to. That changed quickly. It was in the fine print, and that was a real big thing where we as lawyers were warning folks, be aware if you post it, Facebook could use this for however it wants to in advertising, whatever. So that was a definite change, but that was a few years ago. I've talked to several influencers, and either I represent them or if I represent companies who are hiring influencers. First of all, if you're an influencer and you're hired by a company, you have a contract from the company that says what you can and cannot post and what you can and cannot do, and what's owned by the company. So that's pretty clearly laid out in a contract about who owns what. Other influencers who post their own original content very often, and as the attorney, it's my duty to advise, but it's, as the creator business person, it's your duty to decide what you want to do. Very often influencers don't want to file with the Copyright Office or some of them do trademark work. Some of them don't. They're like, listen, I have such a massive amount of content. Some of it's going to be taken, some of it's not. I'll deal with it when it comes. And sometimes when it comes is very difficult to deal with it. And other times they just don't care. It really depends on who the influencer is and the purpose behind it. A lot of it is like information should be free, folks, which is great. If you create content and you want it to be, a gratis license to the world, that's your prerogative. It's if you're going to use someone else's stuff is when you really should be asking permission. But a lot of influencers are like, this is my brand, I like to share it, or I want to keep some things and not other things, or they're hired by a company and the company owns the intellectual property. So it can be different kind of tiers.
Yeah, and there's got to be a lot of gray areas when it comes to those things, like, because right now, Facebook and Instagram, they're kind of not losing full steam,
Meta,
but
yeah.
they are, the meta,
Yeah.
excuse me, they're losing their ability to be in the front of things. They're not the front runner anymore. You've got TikTok and you've got, I guess Insta is trying to push Threads now, and then you've got who knows what Elon's doing over at X or Twitter X, formerly known as Twitter, whatever.
And then like Threads it's like new things coming and coming.
So bizarre, and like keeping up with all of that stuff. So like, but TikTok being up there at the front, which is where I think majority of influencers are right now, is on the talk. To me, I'm thinking there has to be so many questionable, I don't know, because you see they're stitching and they're duetting, and it's like, who owns what, and can you get in trouble for sharing somebody's stuff when the whole goal is to share stuff? And oh my goodness.
It's like, well, originally, like music I can hear, but I can't see or touch, so I must be able to just use it. And I know even with choreography, there are a lot of folks who were on TikTok and they were doing, the choreography was being shared. And then the original person who started that choreography is like, hey, I'm glad you like it. I'm glad you appreciate it. But, I make $5 an hour and I can't rent a studio. And this is globally loved, which is wonderful. But, it's very hard for a creator sometimes.
I can imagine, but it's at the same time, it's like Medusa, because you can't stop it. Like you just cannot stop all of it.
Yeah, it is. It's like whack-a-mole in a lot of ways.
Oh my gosh. Well, I don't envy that part of your job. No,
you do what you have to do. And sometimes you win some, you lose some.
That's true.
And sometimes the beauty of, if I'm not a litigator, so I don't go to court, what I try to do is create the relationships so that you have a roadmap going down, so you know what happens and what doesn't, if something goes right, if something goes wrong, or kind of trying to settle or bring parties together. My goal is to have everybody walk away with something. And that way you keep the relationships. But there are litigators who go in hard and just have to really try to shut things down.
Yeah, that's, and I guess, if you keep yourself, you keep your own business, you keep your work above board, you have less to worry about in the long run.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Oh my gosh. So the entertainment industry often involves these really complex negotiations and sometimes disputes. And so when you're talking like multiple personalities working toward a singular goal, like conflict happens. It is what it is. What are some tips for like maybe resolving conflicts? Because I'm thinking, especially in the creative world, there's a lot of collaboration that happens. So how do you go about navigating some of those conflicts and reaching a resolution together, whether it's in a contract or whether, without, giving legal advice or anything like that? Like, how do you handle these things effectively?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that, because I'm working with one client right now who I just explained to her, she needs a collaboration agreement. They're putting together a musical. So there's the book writer, the songwriter, the lyrics and all that stuff. And they were given an option agreement. And I said, you need your collaboration agreement before you can even consider an option agreement. There are so many issues that have to be discussed: copyright, royalties, credit. What happens if one of you dies? What happens if one of you becomes disabled and unable to continue the work? This and that. And it brought up, she's like, those are really uncomfortable questions. I said, if you think they're uncomfortable now, wait until you're making money. Like, so we
Yes.
went through, like, we really talked through what are these issues. She sat down with her collaborators. They came up with a bare bone structure that I built into the collaboration agreement, because before they can sign with a producer, they need to know what's going on. First of all, they need to know what to say yes to and what to say no to the producer, because they have to figure out what, and also the decision making. What if there's a creative difference?
Mm.
Is
And
it
there will be.
unanimity? Is it
Yes.
2 out of 3? Is it a neutral third party? Because there's no way all of the collaborators will agree on everything all the time.
Mm-mm.
Just won't happen.
Mm-mm.
We're people. What happens if you want to sell your interest? What if you don't think you can work with the next person who comes in? Things like that. So these are all really difficult questions that I make my clients sit down and think about and discuss, and then agree to. Because this, first of all, it frees them up to then go and write their stuff and sign their deals and know that they are a unified force going through, and they can really focus on the collaboration and creating something great. And then they can also go into their next negotiations with the production company, or whoever, with whomever they're going to contract, knowing what they want and what they don't want, and that becomes the next negotiation kind of thing.
So see, this is what the listeners need to take away from this, is that they need somebody who knows what's going on in their court to make them sit down and think about these things. Because, I sit down, I think about, there are differences of opinion that are going to happen. There are differences but yeah, you're right. You bring money into the picture and it changes.
Then it gets much
everything.
more difficult. And also, each person in the collaboration should have his, her, or their own lawyers.
Yes.
It's because one can't write for everybody, and each person needs to know going in, not only do we agree to this, if it's 2, 3, 4, whatever, but we've had our counsel, we've been able to come out, and then going forward, we know we're at our strongest.
Nice. Yeah, that is fantastic advice. So are there any changes, like upcoming or recent, or trends in entertainment law that creatives should be aware of?
Probably.
Not to put you on the spot, just something, if anything.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to think of some hot, obviously, AI has been a real topic of conversation.
Oh my gosh.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head, other than, if you create something protected, if you want to use somebody else's something, get permission or figure out how to use it appropriately. But I can't think of any particular trends off the top of my head.
Okay. No, that was just, it was a question that I was like, I wonder if there's anything, because, like I said, the old Google can tell you so much, but, things change everywhere so quickly that I was just like, yeah, I wonder if.
That's true. It's true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if there was one thing that you would want listeners to walk away from knowing or hearing, like, what is the one thing, other than, because, we've said protect and ask permission. Is there anything else that you would be like, you need to hear this?
Yes.
Okay.
Saying no is just as important as saying yes. Sometimes no is a complete sentence. And if you don't want to give something up, don't. Most people, not most people, but very often in creatives, you want the job, you want the job, you want the job. It's so many, but very often what's being offered is more time, less pay. It just doesn't make sense. And just because everybody wants to get those jobs in and on the resume and get like you can't do your best work when you're working a million jobs and you're working things that don't appreciate your value. And it's okay to say no. There's strength in saying no. And that also opens you up to the yes when the better opportunity comes along. So I think that that's a really big thing that I'd say. And a lot of folks are so nervous. Very often I'll have clients come to me like, we just want to sign the deal. We just want to sign the deal. And I say, A, B, C, D may be negotiable. E, F, G, I would advise you not to negotiate that. Like, those are things that are very important. And very often clients will be like, but I just want it. And then the next time they come back, they're like, you were right. And I would never say, I told you so, but it's one of those, like, you have to kind of go through it the first time to realize that it's not just about getting the job, but it's really about your value. And you've created this stuff, or you're going to be creating this art somehow, something creative. And it should be valued, and you should be paid your worth, and it should be appreciated. And don't just say yes. So, long answer, to paraphrase Nancy Reagan, just say no. I don't often like to quote her, but there's strength in saying no, and in just passing on an opportunity.
Absolutely. And that is one of my mantras, is that no is a full sentence. I
Yeah.
don't owe you an explanation. I
And
don't
I think
need
that's
to
very
give you
difficult for
reasons.
women
It
to
is.
say, and I've seen that a lot. There's a lot of coaching that goes into no, because no is okay. Yeah.
Yes. I don't need to
Yeah.
justify my reasons either.
Right.
Like, I have my reasons, you don't
Yep.
need them. But even if I give them, those are my reasons.
They're and they're valid. Yep.
They're valid. Absolutely. Oh, that's good advice. I was actually talking to a director earlier this week. He was a film director, and he made the comment, and because I said that was exactly what I said. I was like, sometimes you have to say no to certain opportunities, and no is a full answer. And he was like, well, there are just some opportunities, depending on what they are, that you don't have a choice but to say yes, because they may be once in a lifetime. And I'm thinking, how do you know? How do you know
Yeah.
it's once in a lifetime? So to have an advocate, which is what I'm hearing, is that
Mm-hmm.
you are an advocate for your clients, which I love, because as a
Absolutely.
counselor, that's what I'm called to do, is to be your advocate, to
Yep.
say, I've got your best interest at heart in
Yep.
every decision that I lead you toward. I can't make you make the decision, and
Right.
I'm only seeing what I can see of the
Right.
process to get you to that choice. But to advocate and to have an advocate in your corner, I think that's huge. And
And
that's
just to
what,
be able to make an educated decision,
yes,
understanding that I am not as close to it as you are, but I can see the big picture. As long
yes.
as you have all the facts, you can still sign that agreement if you really, really want to.
Mhm.
But I want to make sure you understand exactly what it means, the repercussions, and the benefits. And if you
Yes.
want to walk away, to be there in your corner to say, it's okay to do that too, we'll work on the next one.
I
Yeah.
love that. And I was talking to a woman again, like a couple weeks ago. We were talking about how, when we help our children make decisions, it's like, I will be here when you make the right decision, and I will still be here when you make the wrong decision,
That's
and I will
true.
walk you
That's
through the
true.
next one.
That's true. Although I find sometimes my clients listen to me uh, more readily than my children sometimes in terms of my opinions.
There's a different investment there. Yes. And that's a good thing. That means that they trust you. Like,
Yes,
children, they have no,
absolutely.
they're like, kids, no offense,
The
kids,
kids
you're
know
kind of
I'll
dumb
always have their
sometimes.
back.
That's
Yep.
right. We don't know any better until we're older, because I was the dumb kid that was like, I know everything. You don't know anything, mom.
That's a rite of passage. Yeah.
That has come back to bite me so hard sometimes. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, we've covered a pretty wide arena today. And I think if anybody listens to this, they're going to walk away with so much information that is applicable. Like, they can't just say that, well, I didn't get anything from that. If you walk away without getting something from today's conversation, that's on you, not on us. But is there anything else that you want to talk about?
I don't think so. I would just say enjoy what you do too. I
Mm,
mean, that's part of it is, even though it's a hard life as a creative. I mean, I love being a lawyer, and I know you probably don't hear that very much. I really do, because I love my clients and I love what they make. And as hard as it may be, keep doing it. If you can make a living doing it, I mean, if nothing else has come out of all the politics and everything that's going on in the world, it's that the arts really help save our sanities, make a difference in the world, can topple governments. I mean, just keep creating.
mm.
That's more of a point. I think that, but
But that's but
I'm
it's
passionate
so
about that.
true. It's
Yeah.
so true, because art is one of those things that, while we all have different opinions about art, I can't, there are probably very few people in the world who don't like art of some sort.
Or what doesn't touch you somehow to your
Yes.
soul. Yeah.
Yes. And that is one of the conversations that I have so often with other authors, because we get really defensive and territorial. We're like, no, my genre is the best, or, my circle is the best. But the fact of the matter is, I don't read all genres. I don't read
Mhm.
all things, there's some art out there for everybody. What we all agree on is that books are amazing and wonderful.
Yes. And libraries have to stay open and books have to be available. Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, Elissa, this has been amazing. So tell listeners where they can connect with you, where they can find your work, follow you, all that good stuff.
Sure, thank you. My website is ehecker, esq.com. And You can email me at any time at ehecker, ESQ, at eheckeresq.com. I'm located in New York, but I have clients all around the world because, as I said, I'm not a litigator, so I can help you where you are. And I'm always open to meeting interesting, creative people.
Oh, that's fantastic. All of
Yeah.
that's going to be in the show notes too, so that you can go and click on her email or her website and
Click
connect with
away.
her. That's right. Like I've got questions after. Hang around. No, you can bill me later.
No, always
But
happy to be a
no,
sounding board. The other
yeah,
thing
like
is, just so that you know, my consultations are always free. And what
yes.
I do with my creative clients, as opposed to some of my business clients, is I work with you and say, I know that you can't necessarily pay my hourly rate because you're putting everything you have into what you're creating, especially if you're just starting out. So we work on, and something that folks have never heard of before, but what's your legal budget? Have you ever
Mm-hmm.
thought about a
Oh,
budget? And we work through, what can you afford? What can I do for that? And then my goal is to have you be successful and work, get to my hourly rate. And again, it's the long-term relationship. It's not an in and out. It's how can we make you successful? And that's something that I'm really passionate about.
that is fantastic. I think that, again, I don't believe in coincidences. I think this was meant to, like, you were meant to be here so that other people could also hear it, but also me, because like this was a very good connection to make, and I'm so excited. So thank you again
Yeah.
so much for having this conversation,
Thank
and
you.
we can have another one. Like I would love, let's sign up and do
Keep
this again.
it going.
That's right. So
Yeah,
anything else? Anything else?
I think this was good. I
I
had
think it was
fun.
good too. I did too. Look, this is, sometimes you connect with people and sometimes you
Yeah,
don't.
yeah,
This is a good connection. No. All
yeah.
right, authors, if you are looking for resources to help you write better stories and more relatable characters, visit my website, jcarwrites.com/authors.